Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Carolinas Weather Group. We're happy to have you tonight on April the 20th, 2016, right at 8 o'clock here on the East Coast, 7 o'clock in the Central Time Zone. Happy to have you tonight as we're talking about severe weather. This is severe Weather Month for the Carolina Weather Group. And tonight we have Eric Proseus with us from FedEx. Going to be talking to us a little bit about how they deal with severe weather there with FedEx, and also about his ventures into the weather world. He owns a company, and he's got a NWA Digital Seal, and we'll get into that tonight when Eric talks to us about all the ventures that he does in the weather enterprise area. So happy to have Eric. He's a busy man and has been traveling this week, so we're happy to get him in tonight to talk a little bit about weather. Before we get into the topic, let's do a couple of housekeeping rules. This is a live broadcast, so if you do have any questions for Eric or any of us on the panel, feel free to send those via Twitter or Facebook. We can get those answered, and we'll get them answered for you. I think that's the only two ways they can get a hold of us, honestly. So, and then if you're watching on a rebroadcast, we'll be able to share the social media accounts for our guests and our panelists at the end of the show, so you can direct those questions if you're watching on a rerun. It has been a very warm and dry period for the Southeast, so as we always do before we talk about our topic, we'll throw it around to all of our panelists and let them kind of give an update of what's going on in their area. So as I like to do, because I am a beach lover, I love the coast, I'm going to send it down to my good friend Shay, who's been living it up in a hot Charleston, South Carolina this week.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we've had some pretty warm weather returning here. We almost hit 90 yesterday, and we're starting to feel the full effects of spring, just getting out of the whole pollen season issue. So things are starting to look better. We just got out of a 5-day stint of a northeast wedge coming down the coastline in association with that Omega block that's set up across the eastern U.S. So that was interesting during the Charleston Race Week 2016, so that made forecasting a little bit on the difficult side at times, but overall went well. There was plenty of wind for all the racers, and we had a good time. So we're just breaking out of that pattern, seeing some southerly sea breezes. Today was nice, beautiful. Had westerly wind, went southwest sea breeze, and then we had a backdoor cold front come through. So we had a undercut get undercut by the undercut. So some triple action down here in the southeast. Back to you, Scotty.
Well, as we always like to check in with you every week on the effects of El Nino and La Nina, I know you've got some information pulled up for us. So what's our weekly El Nino update?
Well, let's see. Can you see the share screen I've got up?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, let me try this again. All right. How about now?
There we go.
All right, good deal. All right, so this is the 7-day anomaly for the Nino region, and specifically I look right in this belt right here across the Pacific. For those viewers who are not familiar with where the El Nino lies, it's right across the tropical belt of the Pacific right in here. And we start to look at these trends where these blue colors represent where the water has cooled significantly in the last week. It doesn't necessarily mean these are the exact sea surface temperatures, but they've cooled significantly from east to west, and that's due to easterly trades relaxing in what's called a thermocline, or a cold water underlayer, surfacing to the top, call that cold water upwelling. So when we go back over to this direction to the west, we look at Nino 4 region, and we see the temperature is still hanging above 0.5 degrees. So that keeps it a very, very weak El Nino. The main oceanic index is based on this region right here, which is 3.4, and it's holding just a tick above a degree above normal for the sea surface temperature. So we're at 1.088. Now we get over to region 3, we start to see it dive towards neutral phase, and then we get into 1+2. This is where we've seen the biggest drop, and that actually goes down into a La Nina phase for the region 1+2. Once it goes above or below 0.5 degrees of its normal sea surface temperature, that means it's on its weakening trend. So that's what we expect to keep occurring, and it's looking more and more likely for La Nina season as we get into late spring and early summer. So we'll have to wait and see how that works out.
Sounds good. Looks like we're transitioning into that La Nina, and I know a lot of, since we broadcasted last week, I know we've seen some hurricane predictions, so maybe we can hit on those a little bit before we end the show tonight. I want to toss it over to James, who is in Charlotte, North Carolina, pollen capital of the world, I do believe, here in the Carolinas. So, James, how's things going over in your neck of the woods?
Scotty, I'm keeping my fingers crossed that my allergies have not kicked in yet, to my surprise. So I'm waiting for the day that happens. But other than that, the weather's real nice here on the south side of town. I was hoping to get my drone out today because it was pleasant flying weather. Did not make it out today, but hopefully we'll soon. Watching a little rain for this weekend here in town, and also where I'll be going on a short little weekend excursion back to Athens, Georgia. That same rain system will move through the New York tri-state area, and they could use a little rain. Fire weather watch still in effect for my home area of the New York City tri-state, and they had a big brush fire yesterday up in northern New Jersey, just across the river from Manhattan, that kind of put a monkey wrench into the transit plans yesterday afternoon and into the rush hour. But I don't know of any fires today, but I will briefly screen share and show you what that fire looked like yesterday on radar scope. I just found this online, and I thought this was interesting and worth sharing, so pop this up on the screen there real fast. But you can see not too far from the actual New York City area, just across the river there, south of Hoboken and Jersey City. And like I said, kind of disrupted train service for a little while, but no major problems that I heard of today, so that's good news.
James, with your family still up in the area, and I know you grew up there, how often do you guys, or does that area get under a fire weather watch? Do you know? Right off the top of your head?
Statistically, I don't know off the top of my head. I wouldn't say it's unheard of, but I wouldn't say it's annual either. I would say it kind of is every few years. I can remember from when I was growing up there, we had one year that we had a big fire on Long Island, and I know why we were covering that one. They had referenced one about 10 years prior. So it does come around, but not as frequently as I would say in other places.
And speaking of fires, I don't know if Ricky is available to talk yet. He sent us a message here. Give him about 5 minutes. So we may get Ricky back on here. Oh, he's there. You guys, Ricky.
That's the question.
We can hear you, yes.
All right. Well, I'm bringing up my audio on another computer, so I apologize if it sounds like crap. But give me a moment, and we'll try to work through this. Yeah, we've been having, honestly, I lost count how many fires we've had. We got one burning on Round Mountain. We've got one up in portions of Wise, another one in Dickinson County, another one in Buchanan County. Basically, half the state's on fire. But thankfully, we'll be getting some rain Thursday and Friday that should help with that. So.
Yeah, I know you guys have been busy, and you did provide a good weekend for the Bristol NASCAR races.
Oh, yeah. The folks out of BMS were very happy with me, especially after last year, so I'm happy about that.
No rain or snow to speak of, so we were good there. Just a lot of sunscreen and suntan, so. All right, let's go up to Philly before we get to Kit, because Peter, you was close to the fire as well, and it's been hot for your area, if I am not mistaken, correct?
Yeah, it's been spring is finally here, I could say. We've been in the 60s and 70s since last week, and no rain in sight. But it looks like Friday we may get some showers and storms finally. But it's the pollen is just ridiculous up here now at this point. I sneezed about 5 times in class the other day and disrupted everything. So I guess you could say the pollen's pretty bad up here. So yeah, we need some rain desperately. The fires have been breaking out a little bit all around the area, so hopefully we get a nice downpour and help out the situation.
Yeah, I think we're all saying that we need some rain, and I think Kit would agree with us. Kit, how's things on the campus of UNC Charlotte? I know you guys are all studying away for finals coming up in the next few weeks.
That's cute. You think I'm studying.
We assume that's why you're in that nook every Wednesday.
Well, yeah. Anyway, I've had a couple of assignments too, but I'm good right now. But otherwise, as far as weather, like it's been high pressure. We had some clouds. That's it. It's been boring. Around campus, it's been pretty nice with these 70 and 80 degree temperatures. I think the other day we got up to like 87 or something like that. It was beautiful on Monday. Tuesday was a little bit cooler, but finally breaking out the shorts again. So whenever it's that transition period from jeans to shorts, but you still can wear both of them. That's like my favorite time of year. So I was like the sort of the unpredictability of spring, like right as it's becoming summer. It's like the coolest bit for me because it's just like everything all at once.
Yeah, I'm happy I got the shorts on. I love the warm weather. I'm glad it's here. And James, like you, my allergies were fine until whatever started blooming this week. It's finally got me. I don't know what it is, what allergen it is, but it's finally got me this week.
Yeah, I think one of the tree species kicked in this week, so I thought I was going to be doomed, but
Yeah.
We just need some rain to get some of that knocked away.
Thanks to Zyrtec and Flonase. So if you want to sponsor the show, I would gladly promote your stuff because it's some good stuff.
For the record, I hadn't checked the Drought Monitor in a little while. We are now, and I don't know if this is new or not, but we are in a abnormally dry period across.
James, I have that pulled up.
You have it pulled up? Okay, I won't touch it.
Right,
is that new or?
There it is. That's the one that was updated last week. Like updated the 14th. Well, it'd be interesting to see what it is tomorrow afternoon when they release that. But if you ever want to check it anytime, anyone, you can go to just Google U.S. Drought Monitor and you can see the full country. Let's see here. Whole country's got a good bit. That's the southeast. That's full country. Most of the eastern coast just has a few abnormally dry regions, but it's still very dry way out to California.
Yeah, so let's talk to a guy who's actually seeing some rain. Who's seen quite a bit of rain. Well, not quite a bit of rain, but you've seen your fair share of systems come through. Eric, thanks for joining us tonight there in Memphis, Tennessee. How's things going in your area?
Going pretty good, thanks. I feel your pain over there on the pollen. I'm going to do my best not to cough all over my microphone and you guys tonight, but I'll use the mute button liberally here tonight. So getting through the spring sinus season here in Memphis, and yeah, the rain is we've had a little below normal so far for this month, but I'll tell you what, March was ridiculous. We ended up with over 16 inches of rain in March here in Memphis. Two major systems. The first one about a weekend dropped 8 to 10 inches across the area. Another one towards the end of the month, another 4 inches. Ended up being the second wettest month on record here in Memphis in March. So just crazy amounts of amount of water. But now we're just kind of more into a spring-like pattern. Did get the kind of the back end of the Omega block a little bit, although we were kind of on the southwestern part of it, so a little more cloud cover rather than real warm temperatures. But another system moving through tomorrow and get a little bit of thunder. Just fairly typical for Memphis spring.
Yeah, and Eric, before we kind of get into our topic tonight, speaking of the weather, you guys have been fairly active late winter, early spring, even some tornadoes in the vicinity. I know Memphis has seen a couple of warnings throughout the past couple of months there. I'm not sure if one touched down in Memphis, but it's been kind of an active spring or an active March, as you were talking about.
Yeah, it's not been too bad. You know, this is kind of right now is right about the peak of our severe weather season, April. Although we really try to, especially when we're training people that are, you know, either going to be spotters or if they're kind of new to the area, that we really, although we have a peak in the spring and we have kind of a secondary peak in November to early December, we get severe weather here 12 months out of the year. You know, the proximity to the Gulf certainly helps with that. So we're getting. If we get good southerly flow any month, usually we're getting pretty good moisture off the Gulf. I think the last real close call we had with the tornado was actually 2 days before Christmas, December 23rd. There was several tornadoes in the south central and lower Mississippi Valley. So we had tornado warning here in the Memphis Shelby County area for that one. But yeah, we can get it pretty much any time, and it's, you know, the last few years has been relatively quiet severe weather-wise. Even most of the nation, in fact, if you look at tornado statistics and so forth. So maybe going into La Nina means something a little bit different for us going into next year.
Sure, and let's kind of talk about, Eric, before we get into the FedEx and Memphis weather. What got you interested in weather? How you started it, and what has been the career like for yourself as you've got to the point you're at right now?
Yeah, so like many people who are in the field, have a passion for weather, a lot of times there's an event or two that when they're young that kind of spark that interest, and I was no different. I moved here to Memphis when I was in 6th grade, which was 1986, and the next year after that, West Memphis, Arkansas, which is just across the Mississippi River from us, had a triple event basically around Christmas that year, and again, severe weather, Christmas time, not unusual. But there was an F3 tornado that went through West Memphis, Arkansas, December of 1987. And there happens to be, at that time, there was actually still is a large dog track where they race dogs there, and the tornado came through there and basically missed a full dog park with several thousand people in it by about half a mile in F3. Did a lot of damage. I vividly remember going over after that, maybe a week or two later, driving over with my parents just to kind of see, what happened and drive through the interstate, just look at the area, and still have very vivid pictures of that. And then after that, actually it was Christmas Eve night that year, there was a foot of rain that fell. So not only on top of all the tornado damage, but they had this massive flood event. And then 11 more days later, a great big snowstorm. So within a period of a month, there were 3 very, very different events that all took place back to back, and I think that just kind of solidified it for me. I was interested in the weather from then on, pursued it through high school, college, went to the University of Memphis here, got a meteorology concentration, geography degree from there. That's kind of when I started, writing some forecasts. It was for like many people in college or whatever, you kind of writing it for yourself and anybody who will look, and started that. And then once I graduated from college, created MemphisWeather.net out of that, which is the website that I maintain to this day. And so that's kind of where my interest came from. Excuse me, from a professional background. After I graduated from college, I went into aviation weather research here in Memphis at the Memphis International Airport for Lincoln Laboratory, which is the research arm of MIT out of Boston, and basically was helping to develop a system that is used today by air traffic control to basically detect weather events in an area around the large airports of the country and do things like wind shear detection and prediction. And algorithms that are built into the radar to detect those, send the alerts to the controllers, who then send them on to the pilots, and that system is one of the reasons we haven't had a major wind shear microburst accident in decades here, a couple of decades here in the United States. So it's been very successful. So I did that in research for about 7 years, and then moved over to FedEx with my background in aviation. Applied it pretty well, and I've been with FedEx now, senior meteorologist, for the last 11.5 years.
Wow, I know Ricky's ears perked up because he's a pilot as well. So I know he'll have some fun talking about that. So. Talk to us about FedEx. What all you guys do there in the weather industry? I know you being a global company, you're always busy 24/7. Kind of talk about what the process is, what your daily job is there at FedEx, and then we'll kind of go into some of the details.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. So we have a department of 15 meteorologists at FedEx. We're all based here in Memphis, and we basically forecast the globe from Memphis. So we're covering whatever is going on from right here. We're located with our dispatch center, our flight dispatchers, who are the ones that file all the flight plans for the aircraft worldwide, and those are filed with the FAA so that they can, they're authorized to take off, land, and operate. But we're basically sitting right there with the dispatchers, and we're kind of broken into an operational meteorology area, and then we have a support role as well. So we have a manager and 3 individuals that serve in kind of that support capacity, and I'm one of those. And then there are 11 meteorologists who are doing what you would expect from a normal meteorological field, which is your 24/7 shift work, covering the clock, writing forecasts, preparing all the products and stuff that go out to all of our customers. So it takes basically a small part of that contingent to support the operation, whether it's training or development of products, or testing products before we roll them into operations, maintaining websites, all kinds of things like that. So that's kind of where my role is, and so it kind of affords me the very nice luxury of working a meteorology job that is Monday through Friday on the day shift. I do check email on weekends and kind of keep up with things, just to kind of keep an eye and support as I need to. But I'm fortunate, especially with the family and so forth, that I'm able to go home in the evenings and attend the ball game or the the music concert or whatever it is, and not have to worry about the weekends and overnight. So that's good. But a lot of our job function revolves around normal weather watch and weather forecasting responsibilities. We do write TAFs, which are terminal aviation forecasts. Those are basically forecasts specific to aviation that forecast generally out anywhere from 17 to 30 hours, depending on the city that we're writing or the airport that we're writing. We'll include things like cloud bases, visibilities, precipitation, wind. It's a lot different than many people think of when they watch the the TV broadcast and they hear partly cloudy, 55, 10% chance of rain. Very little of that is actually beneficial in the aviation field. Partly cloudy has a cloud base to it. Visibility is a certain number of miles. Temperatures really don't matter a whole lot unless it's below freezing or it's very hot. So we have to get a little more into specifics on some of those kind of things because that dictates how the operation runs. So TAFs are one of the big things that we do. We write forecasts, those terminal aviation forecasts for 43 major United States airports that we fly into. And then we also do a handful, about half a dozen international cities on a semi-routine basis. Excuse me. And then we have many other other products that we issue to kind of supplement that. Those will be things like outlooks. We write a specific outlook for our air traffic control department for Memphis each evening, and we could talk more about kind of how our system works in a little bit. But very crucial time period for the FedEx International global network is Memphis at night between about 10:30 p.m. and 1:30 in the morning, because we have bukus of flights coming in from all over the globe into Memphis, and so we're the busiest airport in the world during those 3 hours of the night. So we write very specific hourly forecasts for that, and then various and sundry other things. Work with the dispatchers to make sure that they have the information they need to support the pilots. The crew force, the pilots that are out there, get our weather information through their flight release, which means they get the forecasts and the winds aloft and everything that's in addition to how much cargo they're carrying and how much fuel and all that kind of thing. It's all in one package. So they get their information that way, but they also have an 800 number they can call. So if they are in Hong Kong, looking at what their flight is going to look like that night at the hotel or whatever, and they just want some meteorological advice, they can call us direct and speak to a human and kind of get some insight beyond just what the forecast has. So we support mostly aviation, but we also, as you've seen purple trucks driving around that have the FedEx logo on those, and so we also support our ground operations in various ways. We also have FedEx Office, which used to be Kinko's, under the FedEx umbrella, and so there are occasions that we're called on to support them as well. So it's basically, we're the corporate weather experts for FedEx, and so we tackle just about anything.
Very cool, Eric. That's fascinating. So I see that we talked about TAFs. How often do you perform do you issue these TAFs? And also the other question is, like NOAA has ads. Do you have a similar program that you use that pilots can use to talk to each other while in air or while going en route or briefings for themselves?
Okay, so we excuse me, sorry. We issue those 43 TAFs twice a day, and then we have a subset of those, about half of those, that goes out a third time a day. So we're on a little bit different schedule from the Weather Service, where they issue theirs, for each of their regions, basically every 6 hours, the 0, 6, 12, and 18Z hours. Ours are dictated by our operations, so we issue them at a time that is geared specifically for when our aircraft are going to be operating, and that's why some of them are longer than others. Some of our longer haul flights or cities that are farther away will have longer TAFs than those that are for short hop flights, say like I flew Dallas to Memphis last night. So that's an hour basically. So all of the TAFs are at least 16 to 17 hours long, but some of them will go out to 30 to cover like Anchorage, which will cover our international Asia to the U.S. type flights. So we're issuing those 2 to 3 times a day. It's cut back a little bit on the weekends. We don't do as much flying on the weekends, so again, there's no reason to write all those TAFs if we don't have an airplane going to that city. So we do scale back a little bit on the weekends. And then your other question, I'm sorry. What was the follow-up to that?
Oh, I was just asking if you had software that was similar to what NOAA Ads uses, and pilots can sort of post turbulent anything like icing and turbulent reports, anything that they can share with each other on screen.
Right. Okay. So all of that, all of the information that the pilots might be sending in is actually feeding into the general national airspace system, and that all goes to ads. So if if one of our pilots submits a PIREP of turbulence or wind shear or something like that, that actually gets fed not directly to other pilots, but it gets fed to the controller that they're speaking to on the ground, the air traffic controller, and then the controller is responsible for putting it in that system, and it will show up on ads or wherever you might be looking at those PIREPs, just like any other carrier would. Now we do have a corporate weather website though that is internal to FedEx. It can be accessed by anybody that's got access to the FedEx intranet. So no matter what company you're working for, whatever within FedEx, and from there pilots can go in and look at all the radar, satellite, upper air charts, all of that kind of thing, model data. We use it from the meteorology department perspective to do things like look at specific model parameters and stuff that we use. We use that system also to actually input our TAFs into the computer system that then can be retrieved from other places. But the pilots will use that also kind of for pre-flight and so forth. The one thing that they can't do, unfortunately, is that once they block out or they back away from the gate, whatever weather information they had when they left is what they have until they land, unless they get specific messages from their dispatcher. And the dispatcher is the only one that it's allowed to talk to a pilot in flight besides the controller. So if I, as a meteorologist, wanted to get, say, a new SIGMET came out for turbulence or thunderstorms in their path, I actually have to go through the dispatcher to give that information to them, and then they send it through what's called ACARS, but it's basically a text message kind of scenario up to the cockpit, and then they retrieve it there in the cockpit.
Gotcha.
Eric,
go ahead, Ricky. Go ahead.
I'm just curious from a flying standpoint, why is that still? Is it just because of the age of the airplanes and the technology in it, or just preference for the company?
No, that's actually FAA regulation. So the dispatcher is basically kind of like a pilot on the ground, and so it's the way that the FAA has the regulations set up so that it basically creates a one-way path, a two-way path between two individuals that are responsible for that aircraft, so they don't have to worry about, well, where is this message coming from, or who might be getting in on the conversation. It's all, secure and everything. So that's really, besides the controller, the only way to reach the pilot is through the dispatcher.
Gotcha. I'm just curious, the general aviation community using ForeFlight a lot now, and a lot of the radar in cockpit things. It's interesting to see how still the commercial aviation industry seems to operate.
Yeah, now they of course have their onboard radar and the weather tools that they have there. They can monitor the wind speed around the aircraft and wind shear and that kind of thing. They get alerts for all of that in the cockpit. But as far as sharing between, really the only other people besides the dispatcher and the controller, I guess I could mention that they can speak to is to other pilots. So if they're on the same frequency, if they're relaying something to a controller, obviously another pilot in trail or whatever will hear the same message.
Now, Eric, do they have pilot reports, like formal reports where you would actually sit in and do a briefing for a group of pilots, or I understand business is just ongoing constantly without any real missions except to just get to the next place. So do they have pilot briefings, and are you part of them at times?
The only pilot briefings we do these days now is through a telephone conversation. So they've got the number, they can call us and get that additional information. The dispatchers are trained in weather. They're not meteorologists, but they have some basic weather training, so they're able to read a lot of the charts and communicate with the pilots on what they're seeing there. And a lot of times they will just, the dispatcher will come over. It's one of the nice things about working right with them is we're in the same room, and they can come over to the meteorologist and say, hey, I've got a crew member that is experiencing this or is looking for some information on this, and we can provide that information to the dispatcher, who then goes back and relays it to the pilot. So that does happen fairly routinely as well.
Eric, I'm curious, roughly speaking, how much would you say you guys are forecasting versus nowcasting?
I would say it's almost all forecasting. Yeah, it's almost all forecasting. There's the nowcasting really is is done almost now through the air traffic controllers. So if they have to make deviations around, pop-up thunderstorms that might not have been there an hour ago, or if they encounter unexpected turbulence or something, they're working with their controller to figure out how do I deviate around that, because the controller knows where all the other airplanes are in the sky around them. So they're the ones that ultimately have to give them approval to ascend 1,000 feet, turn left 20 degrees, whatever it is. So that's all handled there by the controllers.
Anyone else have anything for right now? I got a couple of questions. Now, Eric, you're working out of Memphis, and your whole team, your 50 meteorologists working out of Memphis. You're covering an entire globe, and you have many hubs to cover. So I would imagine that your expertise in weather would have to be on such a global scale that, I mean, we all look at microclimates and then our mesoscale climate, and then you're talking global. And knowing the patterns in different parts of the world, are these individuals trained, or do they have like specific knowledge in their parts of the world, or just everyone sort of share everything?
Yeah, it's everyone really does kind of share everything, and a lot of our focus is on the domestic or the kind of U.S., Canadian, Mexico area and the Caribbean. Excuse me. Some of the products and stuff that we do issue for international are more Outlook type of products, where, for instance, we'll have basically a colored dashboard, a green, yellow, red stoplight kind of chart that goes out 5 days for each of our major hubs overseas, and it basically just identifies what type of weather might cause impacts to that area. So, for instance, if it's going to be low ceilings and thunderstorms in Charles de Gaulle, France, Paris, which is one of our European hubs, then based on what we think the visibilities and the probability of thunder and stuff are, then we will color code Wednesday red for Paris. And it's more just kind of an outlook, just so they know we might want to keep an eye on this area because it looks like we're going to have some weather issues there. But as far as forecasting or writing tasks for some of these areas, we really rely on a lot of the same things that we use domestically. Now, the observational networks and stuff, obviously, in many places are not what they are that we have here in the United States, and we're fortunate to have what we have. But we've got access to things like the GFS and European models, the Canadian GEM, and some of the others that cover globally. So we'll be using those. Satellite. There's worldwide upper air charts that are available, that we can use to kind of get the big picture. And then we just use the observational networks that are available worldwide as well to make the best forecast we can. The nice thing is that most of those places internationally, we are flying on the government TAF for that place. So, for instance, Paris, France, the French Meteorological Agency issues TAFs for Charles de Gaulle, just like the U.S. Weather Service does for Chicago. So we're going to be using their TAFs most of the time. But we do have an authorization from the FAA. It's called an EWINS program, or Enhanced Weather Information System, which basically is kind of like our certificate that says that we have everything in place that we need to be able to produce forecasts worldwide. And so if we need to, we can go in and write a forecast for one of these places that normally we would be using that foreign government agency. If their forecast just doesn't make any sense, or they've abandoned it, or we see something different, then we can go in and override that forecast with one of our own, and then that becomes the forecast that we fly on.
Eric, are certain countries, certain foreign cities easier to forecast for than others based on the way that government agency might be sharing local weather observations?
Yeah, it's most of the first world countries are going to be pretty good. You're really not going to have too much problem with that. The data that flows in from these observational networks is generally pretty good. There are some places that you maybe go a couple of hours missing METARs or something, or the observations from that airport that kind of make it difficult. I think the ones that we tend to end up writing forecasts for more often are the more difficult ones, just because of the capabilities and so forth of that foreign government. For instance, India is one where we write 3 cities in India routinely, New Delhi, Bombay, and a place called Bangalore. And basically those cities, the forecasts from the Indian government for those places, especially in the monsoon season, are very, very pessimistic. And when they write those forecasts, and pessimistic meaning like very low visibility, very low ceiling, India is covered in smog anyway, and then they get that particulate in the air, and then they get high pressure sitting overhead, and it's not hard to go down to less than a mile visibility. But the Indian government will a lot of times forecast those down to say a quarter or half a mile and leave it there on that TAF for 24 hours. Well, we can't operate into that city, and knowing the observational trends, we know, it's probably going to go down and up, but it's probably not going to stay there. So that's one of those where for India, we actually write those routinely, just because the quality of the TAF is better coming out of our area, and we've done them enough now that we kind of got a pretty good idea of some of the climate around it and how it works.
I think we have Scotty back now as well. He had momentary bandwidth issues, although he is looking very still down there in the thumbnail.
He might have gone.
Well, Eric, spinning on a different wheel. There's an article out of the Washington Post back in 2014, one that I spent some time reading over. Really good article about what you guys do. And it says there's a section here that says when forecasts aren't enough, the top shipping firms will turn to desperate measures. So they'll dispatch special sweep flight jets to sort of intercept and deliver stranded packages. So tell us about how that works and how what situation you might run into to where this could be the situation you're in.
Yeah, sure. Those sweep flights are not something something that just we do. The other cargo carrier also does it, I believe. But basically, there's a lot of different reasons why we may not be able to get into a city or get out of a city with the freight that's supposed to be coming out of there. Weather is obviously one of those. But if an airplane goes down, if a crew member gets sick, maintenance, whatever it might be, you may have a flight, say, from Salt Lake City that's going to be coming into Memphis to bring all the packages into Memphis for the sort that night, and that's kind of how the system works. All the packages flow through a hub and spoke system, so they all come into Memphis or one of our other hubs. Everything is offloaded, shuffled around, put back on the planes for where they're going, and then they all take off. So, say Salt Lake City has an airplane that's ready to come into Memphis, it's full of freight, and that airplane goes mechanical, something breaks, and they're not able to fly that flight. So we basically have aircraft in strategic locations that are not flying full. We plan them with less than a full amount of freight, and so basically we can take that flight that might be normally traversing over Salt Lake City to fly into Memphis and divert it in air. So the management will basically say, okay, Salt Lake City flight's down, so this flight we need you to, instead of coming straight to Memphis, drop into Salt Lake City, pick up the freight that's there, and launch it off and bring it into Memphis. And so basically what that does is it kind of builds in a stopgap for us so that we can manage getting all that freight in, because as it's if your package is not there by 10:30 the next morning, then we have a guarantee on that in most cases, weather being one of the exceptions to that. But we have a money back guarantee on our packages. I'd love to see that in the commercial airliner, where if they cancel your flight, they just hand you your money back. I don't see that happening.
Yeah.
Or switching into another plane.
Yeah, so they'll cancel and then they'll rebook everybody. Well, it's kind of similar, but we have to be able to handle whatever freight is coming in, so we have many contingencies like that are built in, some of them that will execute only as needed, and some of them that are executed regularly just in case. And they basically, instead of that plane sitting in Salt Lake City for 6 hours waiting to get fixed and all the freight missing the sort that night in Memphis, we can drop another plane in, load it in an hour, and pull it out, and maybe the freight is only an hour late, and some of it can still make delivery by 10:30 the next morning.
So what if you're in a complete, I'm gonna bomb you here. What if you're in a complete major blizzard in a city? No one can land. There's a no flights canceled policy. What do you do?
Well, we don't have a specific no flights canceled policy first. I'll say that. We do cancel flights in a situation like that. So obviously if the airport is not able to accept aircraft, that's, we have no choice. We're gonna have to cancel for that. So another situation that sometimes will occur is Perhaps you have, for instance, and I don't know if it was specific to this event, but Monday, Houston was underwater with all of the flooding that was going on. So what if the airport is fine and the runways are fine, but you fly a plane in there and nobody can get to work because the roads are flooded to unload that airplane? Well, now you got a plane full of freight sitting there and nobody can do anything with it and the pilots are stuck. So some of those situations, we have these other contingencies that are built in where we may put the freight on truck rather than on plane. You know, it takes a little bit longer to get there, but you know, you can get it closer to the destination. That's always kind of the goal, is if you can't get it to destination, get it as close as possible, because then as soon as it opens up, you can get in there pretty quickly. Major snowstorms, we have different ways of handling that. It depends on what cities are affected. Sometimes if it's just 1 or 2 flights into a city, we'll just cancel them, wait for the airport to reopen, or for us to be able to plow the gate to be able to pull the airplane in and people can get there to unload it, and then we'll delay it. And sometimes those delays, the commercial carriers, the passenger may call them cancellations. We may operate at 24 hours late. Technically, it's not a cancellation. It is 24 hours late. But that's one way. And other ways are simply rerouting the freight to other locations. So Newark, New Jersey, which serves as our hub serving New York City. If they're going to get a massive snowstorm up in the New York City area, then the flights that might normally go to New York City might be diverted to other hubs. So the plane that would go, say, from Orlando to New York City might come to Memphis instead. Memphis can, basically by bringing that freight into Memphis, we can still get it to anywhere in the world from Memphis. So the closure of New York does not then cause the packages going from Orlando to Seattle to be, misdelivered. It can flow through another hub. So we do that for a lot of these major storms as well.
Now, I remember just a particular major storm back in 2000 that had diverted a plane in the South Pacific around, I believe it was a hurricane, and a guy named Chuck Nolan, also known as Tom Hanks, was stranded on an island. Just that movie, just as far as in that case, what would happen when there's a large hurricane there's a airplane out of contact with, I think it was Tahiti Control? What usually goes on when something like that happens from FedEx's perspective?
We don't let that happen. Yeah, that's really the bottom line. We don't want to lose Wilson out there sitting on some island in the middle Pacific. But no, that's kind of where we come in as well. So we do monitor global tropical weather and so forth as well. And so we do not put our aircraft in situations where unless a multitude of things goes wrong. The Malaysia flight is one example. There wasn't a hurricane there, but they lost it out at sea. That's not just one thing that caused that. There's got to be a chain of events that happen that cause that. So you certainly can't rule something like that out. But generally, we don't get the planes in that situation. We're going to be knowing, where those tropical tracks are, where the thing is headed. If it's going in an area that we would be landing, we're going to be delaying it. We're going to be getting planes out of that area before the hurricane makes landfall. That's one of the things we kind of do from a support side as well in our department. Is a lot of these contingency calls. Telecoms with people worldwide, talking about their specific operations. If there's going to be a hurricane that's moving through the Caribbean, we're going to be talking at least a day, if not 2 or 3 in advance about what that track looks like. When do we think that we're going to be able to last operate into that city? Maybe it's San Juan. When is the last time we can get in there? Make sure the plane is out before that storm gets close enough. And then one of the things that we like to pride ourselves on at FedEx also is not only being the last one out, but being the first carrier back into a place that has experienced something like that. And it's not from a profit motive. It is driven almost always by relief. And so, for instance, after Katrina, after some of these other hurricanes that have made landfall and caused great devastation, FedEx is typically one of the very first carriers back into the airport as soon as they can accept an airplane, and it's full of relief supplies from Heart to Heart or American Red Cross or whatever. So it's, it doesn't do us any good to send FedEx overnight packages into a place that's been ravaged by a hurricane. But they need water, they need medical supplies, and we do a lot of charity work in that regard as well. So, it's good for the company, it's good for press as well. Obviously there's a feel-good story there as well, but, the bottom line is if these people can't get their lives back together, then down line they're not going to be customers. So we want to do whatever we can to help in that regard.
We talked a little bit earlier about the different technology that's out there that you guys use, and you've done some work in the past you talked about. Is there anything in particular that's coming down the pipeline that you're really looking forward to that will be either really cool or make your life easier?
That's a really good question. I can tell you that the state of the high-res models right now is fascinating. The newer hourly updating models that even give you 15-minute data, like the high-resolution rapid refresh and some of those, is really starting to kind of be a game changer because they're getting pretty good. And so, when you're talking about, for instance, let me kind of describe what Memphis looks like at night. So we have 150 aircraft coming in from all over the world into Memphis between 10:30 p.m. and 1:30 a.m. And so if a line of thunderstorms comes through Memphis at 11 o'clock at night, it is the worst possible location and the worst possible time for our system to operate globally. And so that's something we need to know. We need to try our best to forecast hours in advance down to the hour if possible, because they can, there's plans that can be executed to kind of work around that situation. You can't fix the weather, but you can work with it, and you can, figure out, okay, this is the time it's going to be closed. So the high-res models are giving us even better, timing, intensity type of information. They're not perfect, obviously. They're not gospel, but that kind of data is giving us the ability to look early in the morning at what that night inbound is going to look like, and we can generally tell a lot of the decision makers that we're on a daily phone call with at 8:30 in the morning. We expect a line of storms to be moving through between 11 and midnight tonight, and they can from then start to make their plans. What is that? 15 hours in advance, how they're going to handle that situation, and then we'll obviously tweak it as the day goes along and provide the updated information, but. That's a big one, and I'm eager to kind of see also what GOES-R does for us, because I think that's the amount of data. First of all, we have to be able to process that amount of data, and that's just ridiculous to even think about. But I think there could be a lot of really good. One of our hardest things to forecast, besides the big storms and stuff like that, is low ceilings and visibility. So the half mile visibility, the ceilings below 300-400 feet. There are many times that when it gets that low, our aircraft can't operate into those areas, and so I think GOES-R is going to give us a lot better information, especially the pre-dawn hours when we don't have visible imagery yet. We're relying on a fog channel, or if you've got IR but you've got high clouds overhead, you really can't see where that low deck is, and I think GOES-R is going to really provide us a lot of information that could help. Improve those forecasts, maybe more from a nowcasting than a forecasting perspective, but I think it's really going to have a lot of benefit as well.
When you guys are looking at all the layers of the atmosphere, are you sometimes relying on good old-fashioned weather balloon going up to kind of get to those observations?
Yeah, we use the raw and sound data that's available, and the other thing that we've got available to us now, depending on other flight traffic, is that many of our aircraft, as well as many other carriers out there now, are taking sounding information from their aircraft as they ascend and descend into airports. So, for instance, Memphis, nice, great big city. We've had a Northwest Delta hub here in the past with hundreds of flights. A lot of that's down, but we still fly, 300, 250 flights or so a day into Memphis. We don't have a balloon that goes up here in Memphis. We've got Nashville and we've got Little Rock. So we use aircraft data that, as long as the aircraft's coming in and going out, we basically have a temperature and wind profile with every aircraft that goes in that's equipped. So that really helps to fill some of those gaps, and since we've got those aircraft that are flying worldwide, we can get them in Europe, we can get them in Asia, places that there aren't balloons going up. So that's kind of another way to direct sample the atmosphere. And some of those aircraft are also equipped with dew point sensors, so they get moisture and you basically get the full profile. Many of them are just temperature and humidity, but it's a good start, or temperature and wind, but it's a good start.
That's really interesting, Eric. I've always loved the fact that airplanes being used for soundings. I mean, this year they're running 24/7. They're going to get you the best vertical profiling, and in fact, Panasonic just came out with an article, and they're developing a high-resolution model of their own based on 3,500 of these per day. So I mean that's pretty strong. I think they're building what an 11,000 core processor, something huge. But a lot of this is going to be banking on these soundings all day and every day of the year. So have you or anyone in FedEx started to design anything similar to that, just based on your own soundings? Do you have your own software made for that?
No, so our data is actually, we work with one of those types of companies that processes that data for us. It actually flows right through to the Weather Service as well, so the Weather Service has access to the same information. Panasonic is one of the companies that is working with those, and they're using a lot of that same data and just kind of building the model behind it. I think they've got their own sensors as well, but they're kind of building the model data based on that larger sample of atmospheric soundings that you don't get from the balloons that go up twice a day at certain locations. But yes, we do use that, and we are looking at that.
All right, I missed a little bit. Sorry about the internet issue, but I know we're closing in on 9 o'clock, and I know I wanted to talk about the Memphis weather, what you're doing there, Eric, and then also about the NWA Seal. So I'm assuming you guys covered severe weather when I was coming in. I heard a little bit about that. So let's kind of talk about what you guys do there at Memphis Weather with that, since you brought that company along a long time ago.
Sure, yeah. MemphisWeather.net was formed out of my personal webpage back 13 years ago, and basically what that is just another public weather source. It's an independent, weather source that people can use for forecast information and so forth. I write the forecasts that go on there daily, and it's got very strong roots also into social media. So it was a pretty early adopter of Facebook and Twitter and Google Plus and other things to distribute information. So it basically is just providing weather information for the Memphis Metro. Cover 8 counties here in the Metro, and besides the normal just updates of general weather information, we focus very closely on severe weather. Anything that's inclement, we do nowcasting. So as storms are moving through the area, it's kind of like wall-to-wall coverage on Twitter, basically, where we're providing updates on where storms are, radar loops, and describing every warning that comes out, who's affected, all of that. So basically, it's kind of like a way that you can keep your television on your cable channel and not worry about whether you're watching the local broadcast and still get your direct feed of weather information around the area. So I head that up. I use college interns, meteorology interns, to help with that, and so we've got a kind of a nice pipeline here from Mississippi State University, which is just down the street here in Mississippi, and so I've got typically 2 or 3 interns that are helping with just kind of the daily updates, helping me out during severe weather, where one of us may be posting what's going on, the other one's watching the mentions in the Facebook comments to make sure questions are answered. So we basically kind of keep up a pretty active public profile there, and it gives them some good experience too, because those students that are coming out, a lot of them are going into broadcast, some into operational, but they need to have another skill set besides just being able to stand in front of the camera or just write a forecast, and social media is one of those where you're going to be able to use that no matter what. So they're really getting some good first-hand direct experience doing that. So that's kind of what that does, and then we've got mobile apps as well, MemphisWeather.net mobile app for the area on Android and iOS, so you can get my forecast and radar and Twitter feed and all the stuff that we produce through there as well.
And then Sirius Weather Solutions, is that right?
Yep, Cirrus Weather Solutions. And so it's kind of the umbrella company over what I do. So that includes the Memphis Weather, everything under MemphisWeather.net. I have another website called JacksonWeather.net, which is for Jackson, Tennessee, which covers kind of the rest of West Tennessee. It's mostly radar forecast, a lot of weather service data that's put in one place there. And then the other part that's under that is I also have a national app that is on Apple iOS devices. We've just refreshed this in the last month or so, brand new interface. But basically what it does is, I have heard a lot of discussions about, well, the Weather Service doesn't have a mobile app for their information. And you've got a lot of private companies that are doing their own forecasts and creating, whether they're focusing specifically on hour to hour or if they're 90 days, I'm not naming any names or anything, but they all have their own kind of little shtick. And so what I decided to do was create a very nice, clean mobile app for weather that is not driven by one of those companies and uses National Weather Service data. So when you put in your location or it picks up your GPS location, it gives you radar for your location, it gives you current conditions from the closest place nearby, it gives you your weather service point forecast. You know, this is 5,000 meteorologists out there in the weather service. Can't be wrong. They're you know, local area, they know what's going on there. So we leverage that, and then the other key piece of that is a service called Stormwatch Plus, which is also in my Memphis apps. But that is a national watch warning push notification service that is built into that. So it's basically kind of like a weather radio in your pocket, highly customizable. So you pick the types of watches and warnings you want. It'll wake you up at night for tornado warnings and severe thunderstorm warnings. It works on the polygons, so you're not getting, the sirens are going off, the weather radio is going off, but your app doesn't go off. That means you're not in the tornado warning. And so it's been pretty successful. We rolled that out to a national audience a couple of years ago, and like I said, just refreshed the app to really spruce it up, put a little money into it to get a really nice product from a third party for radar, national radar coverage, zoom down to local level. I think it's doing pretty well. So that's kind of the, part of what my motive, I guess, is, besides just keeping people updated on information, is making sure that people are safe, protected, informed on what's going on. And by having, one of my pet peeves all along has been places that are warning large areas unnecessarily. The Weather Service is good enough to keep that tornado in the polygon. People say, well, what if the tornado makes a hard left and goes outside the polygon? Well, that's why you have people watching the radar at the Weather Service to move the polygon. Okay, that's their job at that point. So if you're in that area, you need to be warned, you need to take protection, and mobile apps is the way to do that these days. So that's where we went.
Now with that app, is that available to download for like anyone, and you can put in any zip code and it'll go to that area?
Yep, it's a nationwide app. So right now that one is only available on iOS, though. We don't have an Android version of it out yet. I know. Part of that is cost justification too. It takes a fair amount to get one of these out, and Android it doesn't quite make sense quite yet, but it's real close. But yes, when you start the app, it immediately goes to your GPS, says you're here, here's your nearest current conditions, here's your point forecast, here's your radar, and then you can put in, I want to put grandma's house in and know what it's going to do there, or the weather warnings work nationwide, so you can put in your house, your work, grandma's house, somebody else across the country, and it'll warn you. A lot of people are in a situation where they're responsible for someone else to let them know, hey, I hear there's bad weather there. You might need to take cover. This is a great way to do it. If I have an elderly relative living in Little Rock, I can set my app to her house, and when I get a warning on my app, pick up the phone and call and say, hey, you need to take shelter. So it works nationwide.
All right, Eric, we got a viewer question. Somebody wanted to know, does climate change ever arise among the forecasting and FedEx senior management?
Really it has not, and the main reason for that is, as we all know, there's a big difference between weather and climate. Weather is what's going on right now, and climate is out long term. We do, we do some longer range planning based on climatological data, but most of what we do is very tactical. It's what is going on in the next 12 to 24 hours. So, believe it or not, I don't care what causes it. Tell me what the weather's going to be doing. If it's going to be 8 inches of rain this year, and 10 years ago it would have been 6 inches because of climate change or whatever, just tell me that it's going to be 8 inches of rain. So it really doesn't come up a whole lot. Being a meteorologist, that kind of thing's on your mind. You're observing the world around you and so forth. But from the tactical perspective, the hands-on, what's going on, they just want to know how bad it's going to be and when it's going to be over.
So, Eric, a little bit of a different. I know we're getting a little bit late here. I wanted to ask you about this before we end the show here. Tell us about your National Weather Service seal of approval.
Thank you. The National Weather Association Digital Seal program rolled out about 18 months ago. It is basically the digital version of the broadcaster's seal. So I know a couple of you, I think, on the panel there are broadcasters, and so you've got your AMS seal and the NWA seal that appear on your lower third on television. It's basically a very similar program, only for the digital space. And the Weather Association, National Weather Association, recognized that in the last few years that there is more and more information available on the internet, and sometimes it's difficult to siphon through what's good and what's not, what's reliable, what can you trust. And so they created this NWA Digital Seal program as a complement to the broadcaster seal about a year and a half ago, and 3 original recipients were awarded then. One of them, well-known, Jason Samenow from the Capital Weather Gang, Bill Murray down in Alabama, who's a part of AlabamaWeather.com, James Spann's group down there, and then Mike Mogul. And in the last several months, I was fortunate to be awarded the 4th seal, and it was a fairly well-done process. It's not something they're just going to hand out to anybody. So I took particularly honor in that, because I was basically had to go through the same exam that the broadcasters go through. So there's a 100-question exam that you have to pass with a pretty good grade on. Covers all aspects of meteorology, and then the broadcasters will submit a tape or a live broadcast to be kind of adjudicated and graded. For the digital space, it was my blog. So they use either webcasts or blogs that you submit your examples of your writing, and they go through a panel that is then grades them on multiple different criteria, and if you pass muster with all of them, then it goes to the NWA president for final approval, and I got that just a few weeks ago, so I am the 4th recipient of the NWA Digital Seal.
No, we congratulate you on that. That's fantastic.
Yeah, thank you very much. It is a real nice honor to have. I sometimes have these discussions as we're going through this with especially when there hasn't been that many that have been awarded, kind of what is the reason for that and so forth. And I think a lot of times, really what it comes down to is if you've been in an area for a while and people kind of know what to expect from you in the social space or in the digital space, you kind of become trusted just because they know if they ask a question, they're going to get an answer and you're going to be forthright and not hype things and that kind of thing. So I think that might be part of the reason there aren't more, is because a lot of people just have been in their area and doing this for a while. People just kind of naturally know who to acclimate to. But from a national perspective, it is nice to to be recognized like that, and who knows down the line how it could benefit. But yeah, it was a good process to go through, and anybody who's writing a regular blog or doing webcasts or anything like that, I would recommend giving it a try.
I'm looking forward to more people getting that seal, and I'm glad they got it to you, because when that program came out, like you said, so many people now, whatever their motives are, running their own social media accounts, and it's good to know that there is a stamp of approval. So congratulations on that.
Yeah, thank you. And most people are smart enough to figure out, if they constantly are asking questions to somebody and they're never responding, or they're missing during severe weather events, they're not covering stuff, they know who to go to. But it is nice, yeah.
That's true. I think I'm back now. Maybe for the third time.
Take it away, Scotty. It's about 9:05. So if anybody else has any questions, and we'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah. Anybody got any questions? Did we get our viewer question?
We did, Scotty.
Yeah, we got that.
Sorry. That's okay. I'm going to be calling AT&T tomorrow and asking them why my internet keeps going out on Wednesday nights and Wednesday nights only. I think it's a conspiracy theory, if you want to ask me.
I think all we have left is Joey's typical question, Scotty.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll do Joey's question then. Eric, normally when we close out the show, we always like to, we have a lot of kids who are in high school, middle school, college kids, teachers, and stuff like that. We always ask this final question is, for someone wanting to come into the career of meteorology or anything in the weather enterprise, what would your advice be to them? What would be that final advice that maybe you give your interns as they're leaving you there to go off into the real world?
Yeah, that is a great question. And the first thing I'll say is I was there. Okay, so 7th grade is when I started getting interested in weather. So the first thing is hang on for the ride, because once the bug bites, it's kind of hard to shake. But beyond that, having a passion for the weather, for doing what you do, is very critical, I think, because there are a lot of folks that sometimes, for one reason or another, just kind of fall into it, and you can tell when you're working, amongst a group of people or with other meteorologists and so forth, who really is really interested in the weather and wants to make sure they're always doing their best, and those who who don't. So, first of all, that's going to be a separator, because there really are getting to be a position where there's more people looking for jobs in meteorology than there are jobs out there right now. The other thing that I would definitely recommend, and you've probably heard this before as well, is that weather can't be it. So you may have a passion for weather, but there may be 50 other resumes out there of people that are passionate for weather. So you have to be able to stand out in some other way to make yourself more beneficial to that company or that government agency or whoever's hiring you. So whether it's some sort of computer programming skill, whether it's a social media skill like we're kind of doing here, there's a lot of other types of things that, if you're going to look for a job, say at the National Weather Service, if you know forecasting, but you also know your way through a computer program or writing, code for something or whatever it might be, something in that side, they're gonna be able to find a place for you. And so it's best to be able to kind of broaden out a little bit, at least figure out ways to get some of these other things to apply back to your weather interest and passion, because then, as they say, if you love what you do, you don't work a day in your life. And that I'm blessed to be able to say that that's the way it is. I don't dread going to work on Monday, and I'm really don't care that much about looking forward to Friday. Yeah, I'd like to have a couple of days off on the weekend as well, but it's not like Wednesday I'm counting down the hours. So it's a good place to be in.
Very, very good advice. And Eric, we appreciate you coming on tonight. Love to give you the opportunity to share your social media outlets so our followers and listeners can follow you.
Yep, thank you. So I can be found on Twitter at Memphis Weather 1. That's the number 1, Memphis Weather 1. Facebook, Memphis Weather 1 or MemphisWeather.net. I'm also on Google+, YouTube, Instagram. They're all Memphis Weather 1. And if you're looking for that national app, if you're interested in that, it's called Stormwatch Plus. You can find that in the App Store. And it's a black and yellow logo. There's a lot of TV stations out there also that have a Stormwatch this and Stormwatch that, so sometimes it's hard to find. But Stormwatch Plus is the name of it. I'll make sure I tweet it out so that if you guys are following me, you'll be able to see that and be able to grab the app there.
And I would be remiss if I didn't ask you this, because Memphis, Tennessee is one of Joey's favorite places to visit. He loves Memphis, and he loves the food there. So
yep.
If we were visiting Memphis, what is the one restaurant that we have to go to?
Well, it is all about barbecue here, first of all, and it's a little different from North Carolina barbecue. I won't go into comparing who's better or anything like that. It's exceptional.
Eastern style.
Yeah. So I was actually at one of my favorite barbecue restaurants today, and it's not one that comes up usually when you're taking tourists or whatever too. But Corky's Barbecue is exceptional. That's where I had lunch today. Central Barbecue is right up there. So if you come to Memphis, at least get some barbecue from somewhere. It'll be worth it.
All right. Yeah, I going to Oklahoma this year. We stopped in Memphis and I ate at a chicken restaurant that's really famous, and I can't remember the name of it right now.
The Gus's.
Gus's, yes, that was it.
That's if you're not going to get barbecue, go to Gus's.
Yeah, that was a little hot. It was a little hot chicken, but it wasn't too bad. I enjoyed it, so it was a good place. So, Eric, we appreciate you coming on tonight, and maybe we can have you back on sometime down the road and kind of talk about how things are progressing there at FedEx and how things are progressing with your company.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me on tonight. It's been a pleasure.
Definitely.
Good to meet all of you.
I'll definitely be looking for that Android release of your app out there.
Thank you. We'll
All
work
right,
on
guys. And as we're finishing up, April 27th, next week, we're going to be kind of wrapping up Severe Weather Month as we talk with Rick Mitchell, who is a meteorologist for the NBC affiliate in Dallas, Texas. We're going to be talking about the tornadoes that just hit there right after Christmas Day.
I think we lost Scotty, but that's coming up soon.
Yep, and then the weekend after that, real quick, I'm going to make a mention, the National Weather Service for Miami and Melbourne, and possibly Charleston, possibly Morehead City. I'm working on a couple of other WFOs up and down the southeast coast to talk about rip currents. So it's May the 4th, 8 p.m. About rip current forecasting.
Just in time for that summer season. That'll be good, Shay.
All right. Well, if there's anything else from the panel?
I think that's it, kid. It's all yours.
All right. Well, for all of us here at the Carolina Weather Group, we thank you for watching tonight. Again, this was a live broadcast, and if you have any questions, comment on here or tweet us at the Carolina Weather Group, and we will answer your questions. Everyone, have a good night.
Ah!